Okay, thanks again for everyone for joining on time. Again, my name is TJ Willits with Veolia Water Technologies, and I want to welcome you to this continuing education webinar on the AutoJet. And today's particular topic that we're going to hear a lot about in detail is about leaf inspection, maintenance, and replacement. Just some opening slides for housekeeping to go through here. Obviously, you should be hearing me speak now. If you're having issues with the audio at any time during the presentation, we have another way to listen to it, and that's through your telephone. So if you switch to the phone call method on your audio panel, you'll get a call-in number, and you can call in and listen over your telephone if you're having issues with your computer speakers or headphones. Also, because there's so many people logged on to this webinar, everyone's microphone is automatically muted. But no worries, we want to make this as interactive as possible. So at any time during the presentation, you should see somewhere on your screen there a question panel or a chat box. Go ahead and type in there any questions that you may have. And we have some time after the main presentation to get through as many questions as possible. Also, about a day or so after the webinar, everyone who attended this will be emailed a PDF participation certificate for your files if you're collecting those for continuing education. So be on the lookout for that. Also, really important, we're really excited about this webinar series. It's our first year. We're getting ready to wrap up our first year for this. And we just want to continue to make this program as best as possible. So go ahead and take the short survey after the webinar. Let us know your feedback, and we'll see if you have any ideas to how we can improve or add some additional topics for future webinars. Great. Now we're going to transition to the main portion of our presentation. I'd like to welcome our panelist, Ralph Mendez. He is the Aftermarket and Customer Service Manager for this particular product line. And Ralph has more than 42 years of experience in fabrication and assembly of Veolia equipment, specifically the Whittier equipment. He supports clients with troubleshooting mechanical and operational issues, also in sourcing and finding spare part components for the equipment that they have installed at their facilities. So this is a great presentation that Ralph and his team has prepared. So at this time, please welcome Ralph to the webinar. Ralph, can you hear me?
Yes, thank you, TJ. Thank you for the introduction. You can see our agenda here. We're going to have filter leaf types, handling and inspection, hub installation and assembly, cloth installation, filter leaf installation. So we're going to have a set of slides that you'll be looking at, and I'll make some comments on them. I won't read every line bullet, but I will elaborate, and I will actually talk about each and every slide. Here's the safety reminders. You can read those. It's always important in safety. We'll talk a little bit about safety when it comes to loading the leaves and doing some of that work. Okay, so for this, the filter types, this is one of the styles. It's a cloth covered leaf. The reason we're showing this leaf is because the majority of our fabrication of leaves, because of the markets we're in, has in the gold and silver market, we do a lot of this style. So we do the cloth leaves in pretty much all the markets, except for in brewing, it's a metal leaf. You can see the leaves in the rack, rolling rack there, and then you can also see the leaves installed inside one of our AutoJet vessels. Here's the other style. It's a metal leaf. It's the laser. You can see the laser weld on the rim there, and you can see that the metal cover, the outer cover there on that first shot. I can tell you in 1981, I was one of the first people they taught to run the laser leaf in our fabrication shop. So I've actually ran that laser machine, put that weld on there, and made this leaf back in 1981, and that's when we started this, and we continue to do laser leaves, mainly in the brewing, in the chemical industry. We use this metal style leaf. We also do other styles, but these are the two main. So we're trying to just touch on our standards right now. We do custom to all other styles. Here's the other style. It's a rectangular leaf for our Filtramatic leaf. It's a cloth covered leaf. We also do it in metal. We're showing you that it's a bayonet nozzle in that right picture. Then they're showing you the carcass with the rubber gasketing. And then the newest thing we've done, just for a point of reference, because these have been out there for quite a while, that cloth cover on there is our new zip and flip. Years ago, we would, you'd have the nozzle area that we had put the nozzle and tie it off. On that bottom area, we used to have somebody sew it. They'd come in and they would sew that edge, and then it'd get to the field. But you guys know in the field, it's pretty hard to get a sewer out there to redo them when you recloth them. So we have this, it's called a zip and flip, that you can tie off that nozzle real easy, and then you can zipper and then flip over that cloth, and it has a really nice fit. So much better than the sewing. So that's the newest cloth cover on a rectangular leaf for our Filtramatic. Handling and inspection. We're going to go through some things. Handling, as you look through these pictures, handling is important, and generally we're looking to have a couple people handle them. They weigh from 85 to 105 pounds. You can see that when we package them to you, we use slats to make sure that the leaf is protected and the hub is protected. You can see when we have them in the shop, we put them inside or a rack that we build and we sell. These are the racks that are in our shop so that we can move them into the crates. So if you're interested, we have sold these racks to some of our sweetener market, and that's how they push the leaves around in the shop. They can get them onto the filter, off the filter if they need to get them repaired. The one on the right, I can tell you in all the years, I also have been in the field, been to a lot of your sites, and this is generally how they are stored. They don't have the racks and they lay them around. A lot of times that can cause more damage, especially on a metal leaf. If they fall, if your hubs are hitting against the outer mesh, that's the fine mesh, you can cause more damage. So we've shown you that picture is what probably not to do. So now we're going to look at some inspection points. In the first picture, we always inspect the O-ring and the O-ring groove. You can see the black O-ring in that sealing face. The picture on the right is the actual other sealing face, because we don't O-ring both sides. One side gets an O-ring, one side doesn't. But that's your sealing face, and you want to protect it. If it's pitted or you've got product, you can emery cloth those, which is not a problem. That'll clean them up pretty good. You really don't want to take them to your machine shop and start taking material away, because then you're going to change the OEM spec on what the thickness of that hub is. So you can emery cloth that sealing face. So that's an inspection point. The leaves, some of the things that can happen to them, you can put a nail in them, you can bang them, and you can ruin the outer cover. Then they're going to need to be reworked. So you got to protect the outer material, whether it's cloth or whether it's metal, to make sure that and that's how we evaluate a lot of the leaves. We're looking at it as an inspection to see what could be the problems. The next picture down there, we're showing you the micrometer. And what we're showing you there is that in all our leaf fabrication, we are trying to get a face-to-face sealing dimension for each hub in the AutoJet, so that if it's 3-inch spacing, which is a standard, we want those hubs to be measured so that you get that spacing. So when a leaf comes in, or if we're looking at inspection, we're going to check that dimension to make sure that if you've ever reworked that hub to put new hub gaskets behind the hub, that you maintained the proper squareness of that hub. So that's an inspection point, and it's critical. The last picture there, we're showing you, that's actually, it looks like a cloth cover. But what's happened to that one, and what's really important when we're talking about inspections, is we can tell a lot of times what's happened inside the filter when we get a leaf back for inspection. Or if you see something like this, you know this cloth was drugged through mud that wasn't cleared out of the vessel, and so it actually twisted and kinked that outer cover. And then if you look at the picture on the right, the long one kind of shows you what we call a potato chip. So while that leaf is in process and it's being overloaded, it starts to hydraulically get bent. And you can see that, and we call that a potato chip. So if you bridge the leaf, if you bridge that gap, which if it's 3-inch, if you keep putting product in and you exceed the bridging point, you start potato chipping this leaf. And we don't want that, because in our sluicing system, we want a leaf that's flat. More hub installation and assembly. We're breaking down the components here. You can see the parts in the left screen. You can see the second one, the critical part of this is the hub stud. We have a shoulder on it. We have 3 standards right now. It doesn't mean we don't make customs, because we have over the years. This is a 60-year product that you're dealing with. So some of you guys may not have our standards. So, but that's critical. We measure those before we put them on the job, make sure they're all the same. And then we also, the other critical point is the hub itself. So we have some standards on those. They correspond with the standard on the hub stud, because if you take those measurements, you'll come out to your dimension if you're looking at 3-inch spacing, 4-inch spacing, 3.75, whatever the spacing is on your particular leaf. Here's some more hubs, and here's what we're trying to show you is when you're actually installing the hubs on a leaf, whether it's metal or whether it's cloth. You always do this in a flat position, so we'd like you to have cardboard or something that protects the sealing face, which in the top picture, it's on the opposite side. You can see the hub studs coming through the hub, and those are tightened on the one side, and that piece is laid down. So that then you go to the next step, and then the bottom picture, you can see the hub gasket that gets dropped over those studs. And we want to make sure that the gasket doesn't get binded up or on top of any of the shoulders. So we want that to fit, and we don't want any binds. You can also see the like 2x4s there that we use, so that when you lay the round leaf on top of that, that you have some stability and it's flat. Now they've actually, on the top picture, you can see they've dropped a metal covered leaf on top of that hub, a hub gasket, and your shoulder studs are sticking through. Now you're going to put the other gasket on, as you can see in the picture on the right. So that one's on, and then the next thing where the arrow's pointing is there is a keyway that's milled into the hub. You want to make sure those match. So the one that's on the bottom, you need to make sure the one when you put that hub on top, that you match it with the keyway on the bottom so you have a complete keyway. And that's the keyway that slides across your filter shaft on that key. So that's critical. If you start putting those together and you mix, you move that to another hole, then you're not going to be able to slide that leaf over the filter shaft keyway. So that's a critical point. Make sure when you're matching that up. And this is for people that in the field, when you're replacing the hub gasket, you need to do this process to make sure that this is correct. And then they tighten up those nuts on top. Now your total leaf there is tightened up in a flat position. Then once it's out of the flat position, and we want those tightened in the flat position so that when you drop it down into the rack, you see at the bottom right, if you have one or if you don't have one, that's in our shop. When you don't want that leaf hub to move, because now you're putting it into a position to actually compress and mic that hub as you're tightening it in a spoke pattern like a wheel. You go back and forth and you're tightening up to get to your dimension. You can see in the bullets that we say 10 to 15 foot-pounds. So to let you know how this is done, if you look at the picture with the frame over there where it's sitting, it's a two-man process. You have one guy on each side of that. They can see each other through the hole of the hub, as you can see in the center picture, and they point to each other which hub stud they're tightening, and simultaneously they're tightening it on each side so you get an equal draw. So that's important, and that's what's being done in this slide. Now we're going to show you a couple cloth installations that are our standards. The picture at the top, we're showing you the extrusion gasket and the hub band gasket. Those are the two that are required. We don't want you to eliminate either one of those. I've seen them eliminated in the field. The hub band gasket's critical, and so is that our extrusion gasket. So if you go to the bottom pictures, we're showing you what we'd call a bungee cloth, meaning that it's one single string that we are going to drag over the OD of the carcass. The second picture is showing you that in the collar, we're going to push that down to make sure it clears the sealing face and that the hub gasket is clearing the sealing face. We don't want those in the way as you're stacking those into a filter. The one on the right shows you that we've done that the collar and the hub gasket are below the sealing face line. And here's another style, and this is called the drawstring, which probably is 95% of what we do. We will make a bungee. It's a little bit more work to do the bungee. This is the type that we do, and it's probably 95% of the time. And most of you there on this call that have cloth covered leaves, this is the style you've been getting. So what's critical here when you're doing this work, you can see the employee at the top screen with a piece of rubber sitting there. He's actually pulling that string. and drawing it up. As he draws it up, he's actually getting kinks in the cloth along the ridge there. So on the right side on that picture, he's actually grabbing that piece while somebody's pulling on it. Even though it shows it looks like it's the same guy, this is a two-man operation. There's a guy pulling the drawstring and a guy who's going to be snapping it. And he's pulling it up and snapping that cloth. What it does is it smooths out the other side. If there's any wrinkles or things like that, when he snaps that, he walks all the way around the rim of that as the other guy's pulling tight, and he's snapping it, and they're getting that as tight as they can. In the center picture, we're just showing you, you loop it, knot it. What we wanted to show you there is, in guys that have done that, like myself, if you see those two wooden pieces, they're broom handles that we've cut down and we use to wrap the string around. Because if you end up having to draw and pull 75 of those in a day on the drawstring itself, your hands, they wouldn't be able to take it. So this is an easy way to get the strength and pull, because we want that as tight as it can be. Okay, on this, on the cloth installation, we're moving further forward. We're showing you up at the right that the single side and the cloth's on there. And the nice thing is all the cloth we put on the filters are laser cut. So the concentricity you can see on there, it's really nice. They used to hand cut them and they weren't as good as this years ago. But this is what we're looking for. We're looking for the concentricity. In the picture on the left, we're showing the banding buckle and the strap that actually you can see the rubber gasket. We want compression there. That's why we put the rubber gasket in there. I've been to the field where on the metal, they don't put that in there. And then what happens is you pinch the cloth, you can get bypass. It's not, that is a problem if you don't make sure you get that rubber gasket in there. So that's critical. The last picture there is showing the other piece over the top of the other piece. And now you have a complete assembly without the capping channel that goes over the top of that. And here's the capping channel. You can see it up the top right. So that capping channel goes around the OD of that leaf. And you move over to the picture on the left. You see this, it's a rubber mallet. So we start from the opposite end of the lugs that you can see on the right bottom. And he starts banging, and it could be two guys. Sometimes it's two guys doing that. They start tapping that channel onto the OD. And when they're done, you're going to see that it's going to come to about an 1/8 inch gap, sometimes a quarter, but an 1/8 inch in general. That means it's fit really well. If you bottom out, there's something wrong and you're not going to get compression. If it's 1 inch wide, because I've seen it, because sometimes someone will go out and get another cloth guy in there and he'll recommend a cloth, and the cloth thickness will actually open up that channel to where you might have a 1 inch gap. So I've seen longer screws trying to hold it, but it's just not a good fit, and there's potential for bleed by. So this is the proper, and this is our standard design. And there's a finished up leaf. You can see how there's not very many wrinkles. You may have some wrinkles at times, not much. Generally, the pressure inside the filter is going to straighten some of those out. If it's a bad fit, you're going to have big wrinkles because they didn't make the cloth the proper size. And when that wrinkles and it overlaps and flips, then that work hardens and it actually you can get a tear. But this is a picture of our leaf when it's finished. So now we're going to go to the leaf installation, and right away what we like to say is that it's always been a two-person job in our facility when we're building and doing this work. The pictures on the right show you a leaf puller and a leaf installer. These are pictures of them pushing it back into the filter, and on a small filter where you maybe have 12 leaves, you may not need to use that too much, but on a filter that you have 57 leaves that you have to push all the way to the back, you really need this piece. It's safety. You don't want to be climbing in there and trying to push the leaves back, so it's a safety feature. The other thing you can do is you can go to YouTube and go to leaf puller, and it's going to show this in a video. So if you want to take a look at that even further, you can go to YouTube, and we have that leaf puller on a YouTube video. And you can see the guys in the picture. There's probably two guys that are lifting them out of the crate, and a couple of guys going ahead and putting them on the shaft. Here's a few pictures of finished. The first picture, you're showing the leaves installed with the front toggle hanger and the cap, the nut, and the got a stabilizer there. We call that the sway brace. And then the center picture, we're showing you the cap and then the nut. That's our standard cap today, but maybe 25 years ago, we made flat machine caps. So some of you may have a flat cap, and then some of you may have this investment cast that we did. So this is newer. This is what we put on AutoJets today. And in the picture on the right, we're locating the rollers and the sprayers, and you get to see how that mechanism works on your sluice bar, or what we call our spray header. So like we said, we recommend 2 people. This is training instruction there on putting leaves into a filter and handling them and making sure the hub surfaces are good, making sure everything's parallel when you're pushing those things back, making sure they're fitting properly. One of the things we always want to cover is when you put this together and you want to make sure your pack is tightened correctly, is we want you to put all the leaves in, tighten it up as well as you can, and then probably from the 10 o'clock position, it's a left-handed thread nut, is we want you to draw that down to your waist, and then take the crescent wrench and cheater, if you have, off, and then rotate your bundle one time, and then you'll be able to tighten it again. When you have 57 leaves or 48 leaves or 36 leaves, when you're tightening it on the end, it's hard to disperse that all the way back. So any imperfections are just, there's some gaps. We're tightening the nut to make sure we tighten it completely. So you may do that 2 times or 3 times. You'll know when you take it to the 10, if you've tightened it enough, you're not going to draw that thing down no matter who you are. So as long as you can continue to bring it down to your waist and get it as tight as you can get it, because we don't call out a torque here on that nut. So that's an important part on the final point of leaf installation.
Okay, thank you so much, Ralph, for that presentation on filter leaves and installation of them. Really appreciate you taking the time to share that. I just want to remind everyone that we had a couple questions come on in, but with our webinar time, we should get to any questions that you might be able to submit. So go ahead and if you have a question, just type it in the box on the right side of your screen there, and we'll try to get to it if possible. Also, while you are typing that question, just want to remind everyone there is a survey after the webinar. Make sure to fill that out and help us with a little bit of feedback on today's presentation, and also you can provide some insight on what you might want to hear on future presentations. So we have one question that came in during the presentation, and it says, if the fabric filter covers become creased or folded, what kind of damage does that incur to them?
Well, number one, if there's creases and they fold over, like it said, number one, you're not going to get good pre-coat, or you're not going to get a nice layer of pre-coating product on your leaf, number one. Number two, when it goes off pressure, it unfolds. When it goes back on pressure, it folds. So in time, you actually create a hard crease, and that will actually create a tear from the back and forth, creating that hardness, working hard, that cloth. Even on metal screens are tighter, but I think one of the pictures that showed the square crease pattern around the outside OD of the hub, we know that's caused by that same thing, that the filter has been overrun as far as the 3-inch spacing or whatever spacing you have. And when you first turn that filter shaft, it actually twists the wire mesh, the fine mesh, and it creates that box pattern. So when leads come in for repair, we kind of know the filter's been overran, and it's over time. Sometimes, you're overrunning it, and over a period of time, you create that box pattern. But that doesn't get good cleaning when it has the box pattern. And when you have creases in your cloth, if the cloth is made and it's not made properly to where you can see the picture of our cloth, that you can drop a dime on it that's tight. So having a good fitting cloth is very good for your production and longevity.
Okay, thanks so much for that. Another question that came in, it says, for beer production, what is the recommended time between refurbishing leaves, or how do I know when it's time to install new leaves?
Okay, this one is, I've been associated for a long time. I was doing the first laser leaves, and the reason we did laser leaves was for the brewing industry. And I can tell you that the beer industry today, their leaves they last a lot longer than they did in the 80s. They were sending them back for repair quite a bit once they got their handle on making sure that they do not bridge or overrun their filter leaves, and clean them in a proper time so that they don't get that bridging. I can tell you, I've seen leaves that we made out of our shop come back to us, and we have dates on them from 15 years, 10 years, 5 years. Nothing, unless there's a major foul up, which I haven't seen in a lot of years. Once you put that laser leaf in there and you run it properly, you can get a lot of longevity.
Okay, thanks. A new question that came in, will a wrong water spraying of the leaf damage the mesh? And a follow-up to that is, what do you recommend on inspecting the water sprayers to make sure they're working properly?
Well, one of the things when we talk about the spray header, sluice header, water sprayer, is that's engineered also. If the jets are at an angle, we have the leaf rotating up through that spraying system. One of the things that I've seen in my field service days is either they're not running the right pressure out of them. What we recommend is 50 to 60 psi. The jets are generally 8.6 to 8.3 GPM. And we want that because it has a specific spray pattern that sprays down through the hub to the OD of the leaf as it's rotating. So that's what we want. I've been to places where they got 100 psi running through them. The jets are atomizing, they're not cleaning. There's also leaves that are in there that are wobbling through the spraying system because they're potato chipped. They don't get cleaned as well. So it's a domino effect. As they bend little by little by little, they get less and less cleaning. You get less throughput. All of that is a domino effect of generally not running the filters and cleaning them. The one thing about an auto jet and how you get longevity is if you make sure you clean, and make sure those leaves every time you go to your next process, the filtering, that you cleaned those leaves and there's nothing on them, so that you can push into the wire mesh or to the cloth or leave on them when you've actually cleaned them. I hope that answered your question.
Great. Next question we have here for you, Ralph, is the webinar discussed a lot about fabric leaves. Can you discuss briefly some of the highlights recommended for the inspection and maintenance of laser leaves?
Well, on the laser leaves, and the reason we went to laser leaf, and it was because of a big brewing company, is on the old leaves that you had that we made for many years was called a conventional leaf. It was a capping channel leaf. It was called a T-bar leaf, and that was compression fit. So we would put the wire mesh on, and then we'd put a capping channel over it. We'd compression fit it, and it had some rims. Well, what happened is to troubleshoot that leaf that was bad was very difficult, because if you put them in and put them out, you washed them, sometimes the two guys would drop them on the ground, it would open up the channel, you'd get bypass. Very hard to troubleshoot the bypass on a conventional leaf. So the beer industry said, no, we want something better. So we came up with the laser leaf, and now you just need to look at the wire mesh on the leaf to make sure there's no holes in it. And also, you know, the hub gasketing, make sure you got good gasketing still. And that's the only change out generally on a laser leaf. If you've got gasketing in there, it's been in there for quite a few years, and you may start seeing some bleed by, we're going to want to change out the gaskets, because then maybe that's the area. But the rim on that, the laser rim on that, unless you've torn something because the leaf flexing back and forth, those are the only areas where we're looking at to make sure a leaf is fundamentally sound. Now, when we get them in the shop, we're checking all that. And the one thing we do on a repair in the shop is we will replace that outer cover.
Thanks, Ralph. And sort of follow up to that is, how often do you recommend opening up the vessel and pulling out each and every leaf to go ahead and do that visual inspection or that easy inspection of those leaves?
Well, we always say, don't be opening up that vessel that often. The reason you'd open up the vessel is if you were experiencing problems. Say you're getting some bleed by. Well, you're going to need to actually find out what's causing the problem, and then you have to take them out. If you're not getting any of that, you know, leave the filter leaves in there. If you want to, because you have a P&M that you want to do, you have a maintenance that somebody said, hey, every year we're going to take these out, look at them. What I would say is, when you take them out, you got to handle them well, because you can create the problem that wasn't there. You can hydroblast. Our system cleans them real well, but over time, if you feel like you have blind spots because you're not getting the throughput, you can actually hydroblast these. And here's the other thing when you're doing that, because maybe you want to change the hub gaskets. You lay those down, not on the ground, maybe some 4x4s, and you put them on there, you protect the screen. You take the hub off first because you're going to replace the gasket. Take that hub off, match your hubs with your hub studs together, and you're going to be end up pulling new gaskets. But when you hydroblast these, when you take the hub off, the outer mesh lays out so that from the outside OD, you can use your pressure washer and wash everything to the center, and it will come out. If you leave your hubs on, if you looked at any of those pictures, there's not a big area where you can actually get really good cleaning. And never hydroblast clean these standing up, because all you're doing is washing everything down to the bottom.
Okay, a question that came in just now is, what is the time recommended to wash the leaves?
Well, it's I'm sure it's different at all of the facilities there, but what we're doing, what we say is, you know, you're running your process, and when you either build up enough cake, you either do it on time or you do it on your delta P. You're building up enough DP on your vessel. So we want you to, when you get to a certain point, whether you know how many solids you fed it, you've come to, say it's 3-inch, you come to 1¼ inch thickness of cake, we want you to wash that. We don't want you to bridge. We don't want you to keep running it. And I've been told, and I've been in a facility where I had to make them new leaves, where they said they knew they were going to destroy the leaves. They had to keep making product. So you can't, if you want to know when to do it, you should always do it when you've built up enough cake to, before you end up bridging, where you're building up cakes big enough to hydraulically bend all the leaves. So, and you can do that in your PLC, or somebody's done that calculation. And we have people here that can help you calculate that.
Okay, another question that just came in is, do you offer training for operators on site at the facility?
Yes, we do. And we are offering service contracts now that we're starting to try to get out there to all our customers so they can take advantage of getting in-house training, getting contractors trained, going through full day doing process training. We have quite a few things that we can offer as extended services. And I can tell you, for the years I did that, it's critical because people are changing. There's new people operating. And we always want to teach the new operators. So yeah, we'd be more than welcome to get into a contract, come out, do some extensive training, even more, give out certifications, give out manuals, things like that. So yeah, we're more than willing to always offer that.
Great. Well, it looks like we are just about at the scheduled time to finish. Again, a reminder to take that survey after the webinar. Also, just one other housekeeping note, that this webinar was recorded, and if you or a colleague want to watch this again, feel free to share the link with them afterwards to go and watch this webinar, and you could store it and watch it at another time as well. Or if you get a new operator, it's a great resource to have. And if you have any questions or want to schedule some time to talk about some extended service contracts, feel free to email either Ralph or visit our website and reach out to us on our website there as well. I want to thank Ralph and his team, Adam and Oscar and Sergio, for preparing this presentation and providing a lot of the photos from the field. It was a really great educational tool for every one of us here today. And also be on the lookout for future webinar invites. We're going to take a break for a little bit, but we're going to regroup and figure out what topics are most beneficial to our customers going forward in the future. So again, thanks for everyone who spent a little bit of time with us here to learn more about the AutoJet and these filters. And I look forward to speaking with you in the future on a webinar. Thanks and have a great day.